Awesome, awesome. Okay. So quick introduction. My name is Philip. I'm one of the co-founders of this company called Homebase, right? And I'll introduce a little bit more about what Homebase does and how we play in the Vietnam real estate market. But my presentation today is actually not about, hey, you should buy this project or something like that. My presentation is more about now that you're interested in all of these amazing projects that Ting An and the IQI team pitched, right? Like what are the actual implications or what are the challenges that you guys need to think about, right? Financially, legally, and all of the other things that is probably in your mind as a foreign investor. And there's probably a lot because Vietnam is a very, very challenging environment. So title is challenges for foreigners investing in Vietnam. So very, very intuitive. So before I start, I'm not sure why the color is a little bit weird, but before I start, I want to introduce a little bit more about Homebase and what we do, right? So Homebase, at Homebase, we're one of Southeast Asia's fastest growing real estate and investment companies, right? So just to clarify, we're not an agency, we're not a developer, we're not trying to sell you real estate, but we're more about the financial services and these kind of other aspects about the ownership process. We try to focus on solutions that are, kind of in Vietnam, and we make it accessible for foreigners, right? So a lot of you guys, first time investing, foreign clients, we can work with you guys, right? We partner with real estate agencies and developers, right? Leading agencies like IQI, but also leading developers all across Vietnam. And our team is over 50 experts in Ho Chi Minh City. Our main headquarters is here, but we can do properties all around Vietnam. And we're growing really fast. So we're still quite young as a company, I would say, but we're in the news a lot because last year we raised $30 million in debt and equity from pretty leading global investors, right? From Singapore, from US, from all over the world, basically. And here are some of the investors that back us, right? People like Vina Capital or some of these other venture capital funds, if you guys are familiar with that space. So just to introduce a little bit more about what Homebase does, we have several services, right? And that plays into the context of what you guys just saw and what you guys just heard, right? The first is the most intuitive, which is, hey, you want to buy real estate. You don't have money, right? Now real estate prices are very, very expensive. They're very high. How the hell do we finance this, right? Because actually, if you go to a local bank, there's no way in hell they're going to give you money, right? So basically, that's what we do, right? We provide an alternative to a bank loan up to 90% of the property value that helps you buy the real estate, right? But we also do other services, right? Another one is we actually can help you sell, right? So some of our clients, they own the actual asset, right? And then years later, oh crap, I have to go to Singapore. I have to move back to my home country, right? And then I have to go through the process of selling real estate. Super long, super annoying, such a hassle, right? So we offer a service where we allow you to sell to us immediately at a slight discount, right? So we call this like instant buying, right? So we'll buy it from you instantly, maybe at a small discount, right? Solves all your headaches. And the last thing that we do after you guys buy assets, right? Some of you guys already may own real estate here in Vietnam, but you want money, right? You want money to put a deposit on another property because property prices are growing very, very high. We have another service called Unlock Equity, right? Which is basically you can take cash out of your existing properties and use it for other purposes, right? Because property prices grow very fast. So overall, this is kind of the comprehensive suite of solutions that we offer. But above that, we also help you provide due diligence because for us, we're a co-investor in every single asset that you buy. So instead of just a developer or an agent, we'll actually put money where our mouth is, right? So we really want to make sure the assets you buy are safe, are secure, and maybe it will even go up in value, right? And then we also will help you with the legal aspects, the tax aspects, all of these other things, right, that you might be considering or worried about, right? How the hell do I move money in and out of Vietnam? It's a very, very kind of annoying thing to figure out, okay? A little bit more about Homebase before I go into the bulk of the presentation. Again, we're very flexible, so we can work with any asset across Vietnam. So, even in Vung Tau, even in Phu Quoc, even in other cities across Vietnam. And then we can work with you regardless of your income, regardless of your nationality, right? So if you've got foreigners from Singapore, from China, Hong Kong, anyone, anywhere, doesn't matter. We're very flexible, okay? Awesome. So that's all about Homebase. And then if you guys have any questions, there's a lot of people from my company going, around. They have the nice black t-shirts, so feel free to talk to them. But you can also visit our office in B1 if you guys have any questions, okay? So the bulk of my presentation here today, though, is about some of the challenges, right, that face foreign investors. So you guys are, very attracted by some of the properties that you just saw, but you may be thinking, hey, is this actually safe to buy, right? And how can I actually get around all of these financial difficulties and situations, right? Very tough question. So today I'll cover four main challenges, okay? Number one is about title limitations, right? You might have heard words like SPA or deposit or foreign quota. Like, what the hell does that mean? So I'll go a little bit more into that. Number two is about due diligence, right? Sometimes in Vietnam, like developers build stuff or they say stuff, but it doesn't get built, right? And Ting An was saying that for her personal property, right, there was a delay in that, right? That's still kind of bad, right? Because you don't want your money to get stuck. So how do you do due diligence? How do you work with the right partners to make sure that you're investing in very safe assets and you won't lose your money or just be stuck for 3 years, right? The last one, or sorry, the next one is lack of financing, right? So another challenge is that you want to buy some of these assets, they're very attractive, they go up in value, right? But you don't have that much money from day one, right? And unlike in the US, in Singapore, in Korea even, banks here will not give you financing, right? They won't give you financing for 70% of the value. So if you're buying an asset that's 200K, 300K, you have to get that in cash and then, from your home country, move it here. A little bit painful, right? So we'll kind of talk about how we can help with that problem, right? And last one is just operational hassle, right? There's a lot of other implications around legal, around tax that you might need help with, right? So let me dive a little bit more into every single one of these. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt me throughout. Otherwise, we can save questions at the end as well, okay? So let's start with the title limitations, right? And go a little bit deeper into that topic and kind of explain what that means. So I think, overall, right, we see a very, very positive direction happening in Vietnam in terms of allowing foreigners to own certain types of assets, right? However, even today, right, it's actually very asymmetrical, right? Asymmetrical being that it's a little bit more unfair to foreigners, right? What do I mean by that is that if you look at I'm not sure why the color is off, but if you look at Vietnamese organizations or individuals, right? Like if I'm a Vietnamese individual and I buy an asset, there's actually certain types of titles that I can access that foreigners cannot, right? So for example, the most solid one, the most kind of, close proximity to ownership is actually this thing called the pink book, right? So if you guys are foreign investors, sometimes you'll see these like pink book. It's literally like a solid pink book, right? That people will have. And Vietnamese investors like this because it's basically the official title. For you as a foreigner, sorry, right? The next one is basically when developers. So a lot of the projects that you guys saw earlier, right, are primary market. That means that developers are building it, right? But when developers have not gotten this pink book yet, right, you'll get this SPA. So SPA is a sales and purchase agreement. And this is the local quota of that. And then when the SPA has not been issued at, then basically you'll get a deposit agreement from the developer. So these are basically different stages that your title will go through if you're a Vietnamese individual, okay? But this is a little bit different than what foreigners can actually access, right? If you guys are a foreigner, right, you probably cannot get this pink book, right? So this is probably not something that you can actually access. The best approximation to the title for you as a foreigner is this foreign SPA, right? So this is analogous to this local SPA, except as mentioned, there's a 30% quota on that, right? So this is 70%, this is 30%, right? And because of the legal regulations, this is basically the best proxy to the title that you guys can access, right? Before this, that means that before developers have like built up the infrastructure or built up the foundation, you can only access this deposit agreement, right? So this is basically saying that, oh, you've deposited 30%, but me as a developer, I promise to build this in the future. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't happen, right? So a little bit less mature than this kind of title. And the last one is long-term lease. So some developers issue this when this 30% has run out, right? So let's say that I'm a developer, I want to sell more and more units, but I actually can't legally sell it. So basically, I promise to lease this to you for 50 years, basically as a way to go over this law, right? So very, very transparent. This is actually how the legal system works in terms of title ownership for foreigners in Vietnam, right? And as you can see, it's quite asymmetric. And I think if you guys kind of just consider the entire infrastructure, entire environment of what are the different types of assets that you can access versus locals can access, quite different, right? So here you'll see a lot of land, right? A lot of locals and Vietnamese locals, they like to invest in land, right? Why? Because historical land prices and appreciation is very, very high, right? And a lot of them also like to invest in landed property, right? Especially, houses in Thao Dien, those kind of things. And then obviously there's apartments, right? So actually from a legal perspective, ownership perspective, as a foreigner, right? most of these actually cannot be accessed by the foreign quota, right? Just because of where things are. The positive direction is that now, some of these projects with landed property, you can actually access because the government is changing the law and they're opening it up, right? But quite frankly, right now, a lot of them is still not under that foreign quota, so you cannot access, right? So actually at Homebase, that's one of the things that we actually will help you with as well. So we have clients who are foreigners who want to buy land, who want to buy landed property, right? And traditionally, maybe you have to go through a local nominee, right? You have to find someone Vietnamese, but we'll have a kind of a solution around that as well, okay? So basically, this is the asymmetrical restrictions on ownership. Any questions so far, or should I? Okay, awesome. The next thing is about due diligence, right? Now you guys are considering a lot of different projects, right? You're considering, oh, should I buy this project, buy this developer? Should I buy that one? Should I buy this condotel in, whatever beach location, right? But it's very, very important that you guys are very confident, right? That this property is secure and it's safe and will not get delayed, right? So basically, you should actually exercise very, very comprehensive due diligence. And the way that we think about this at Homebase, right? And when we walk through all our clients, is that it's actually quite different between the secondary market and the primary market, right? In regards to what those mean, secondary market is resale market, right? So anything that's not sold by a developer, anything that's sold by individual, right? And then primary market is the new releases from the developer. So in the secondary market, right, often what we see in Vietnam is actually quite different in mature markets, right? In markets like Singapore, right, or US, as a part of your closing process, you actually have to have title insurance, right? Or you do a title search. So fundamentally, basically, you're insured that there's no disputes on the underlying ownership of the property. In Vietnam, there's no such thing, right? So if you basically are buying something like that, you really want to make sure that there's no disputes, this title is clean, there's no liens on the property. And sometimes you have to do that yourself, right? Another thing that happens in Vietnam, especially in secondary market, is zoning, right? Because the city's changing so fast, right? You see this highway coming up, you see all of this infrastructure. And if you buy a secondary market house, right, you want to make sure that in 5 years, your house is not going to be in the middle of a highway, right? Because the government will give you 2 cents on the dollar and, you probably won't be very happy as well. So that's something else that, we really want to make sure that you check, right? Yeah. And again, as I mentioned, right, the problem here is that there's really lack of this title services. In primary market, there's obviously some issues as well, right? Sometimes there's agents that are unscrupulous. I think you guys are great, in great hands here at IQI because obviously, a very international reputable agency, but definitely something to be wary of. But the more often kind of issue that arises from primary market is this, right? Construction delays and legal issues, right? And you'll see actually almost every single developer has, experienced this, regardless if it's an international developer, local developer. So what you want to really make sure before you guys buy any projects, right, is that the developer has the construction permits, has the zoning permits, and this, even if there's like a payment schedule with all of the pretty pictures, that there's no delays, right? Why? Because then your money will get stuck, right? So I have some examples, right? Really famous examples of Saigon, of things that have gone wrong, right? So one of the most famous examples is this one called Centennial. So there was a project by this, basically a Hong Kong agent or a developer called Alpha King, right? Very, very expensive. I think it was around 15K USD at the time. And I think they got all of bookings, but they just never got the legal permit, right? So basically ended up having to refund customers money. I think some customers didn't even get their money. That project is right next to Vinhomes Busan. So one of the most expensive parts of Saigon, ultra luxury project. And now it's being handed over to Masterize. They're building the JW Marriott there, right? But for those investors, right, who thought that, hey, this is a very reputable developer, prime location, very luxury, they still have these issues. They still have these delays, right? So that shows you that you really have to be careful, right? Because you don't want to get in bed with the wrong person. Another one is this, right? It's basically an eyesore that everyone sees in the middle of Saigon, right? The Saigon 1 Tower, 80% complete, developer ran out of money, and now basically have to be bought back by another developer. And there's a famous example in Da Nang called Coco Bay, which is a local developer. They brought Ronaldo to the opening ceremony. It was amazing. And then basically ran out of money as well, right? So really, really want to be careful that, when you buy from these developers, that you're buying something from someone who's very trustworthy and that you're confident that you're going to actually get your investment back. Okay. The last kind of issue that I really will dive into is this lack of financing, right? Because you guys may be convinced that, hey, I bought from the right developer, I have the right partner, I have the right agent, I really love this unit. How do I afford it, right? So luckily some, basically developers, they do a payment schedule. So you basically pay 10%, then 20%, 30% over time, right? But sometimes you have to pay 45%. Or if you're buying in a resale market, you actually have to pay 100% at the time, right? And that's a lot of money. And unfortunately, apartment prices here in Saigon are going crazy, right? I mean, there's a very, very good reason for you guys to actually buy an apartment because it's growing very, very fast. But what that means is that you actually need a financing option, right? So for Vietnamese, is actually, pretty standard now, right? There's bank loans available basically for Vietnamese citizens under age of 65. They usually do up to 70% of the property value. So you put in 30%, something like that. You basically pay principal plus interest, like very standard loan payment schedule that you guys will see in a lot of developed markets. And then maybe there's interest rates, right? Pretty high interest rates, 9 to 12% in Vietnam, just because of the interest rate environment here and how this is emerging economy has higher rates, right? But for foreigners, right, basically none of this exists, right? So traditionally, what you have to do is you have to find a way to bring your own money into Vietnam and then buy the real estate, right? So that's the problem actually that we here at Homebase, we're here to help you solve, right? So at Homebase, we basically provide another way where we can work with anyone, foreigners included, and it doesn't really matter about your income or your nationality, we'll work with you. We can do up to 90% of the property value. So basically you only need 10% in the beginning, we'll put in 90%. And how we work is very, very different than a bank, right? Basically we'll buy the asset from you and then we pre-agree a future buyback price. So let's say we buy it today at 100K, we pre-agree that you buy it back from us at 150K. Every single month, all you do is you deposit towards that 150K. And as soon as you deposit it, we'll transfer it back to you. So that's fundamentally how it works. And then how our fee is based is just purely based on that appreciation, which is usually around 3 to 8% every single year. And it's pre-agreed, right? So basically, this is another option if you guys are interested in being able to own and finance the underlying asset, basically, okay? Awesome. So very, very short talk, but I think my overall takeaways for foreign investors are threefold, right? Number one is that Vietnam is still a very, very exciting market, right? It's very fast growing. I think there's a lot of potential. A lot of you guys believe in this market, so that's why you're here. Very exciting, right? However, there's still some challenges and barriers that exist, right? Both in terms of legal ownership, but also in terms of financing, right? How do you actually own the asset? But how do you also make it very secure, very safe? How do you find the right developer, the right projects, right? To make sure that you're not going to lose your money, right? And how do you find the right diligence process that you need to do? So basically, I think, overall, it's still very important to do that diligence and be very careful with kind of the partners and the project that you guys do choose if you do invest here. But that's all for my presentation. Any questions so far or anything I can help with? Okay. Yes, yes.
So how does it work if my clients, let's say, get new service from Homebase, and who will sign a contract like sales and purchase agreement?
Yes.
And what happens when my client pay back completely? How can you transfer the title to my client under the ownership, like a foreign quota?
Yeah, that's great.
Is it possible and how?
Yeah. So how Homebase works is that we will buy the asset first, right, under our name, right? And basically every single month you sign basically like a deposit agreement, right? You're depositing more and more and more towards that buyback price that we pre-agree, right, in the future. And as soon as you pay that price, then we transfer the property back to your client or whoever it is, right? But fundamentally, right, like we can't change the law. So basically, if we buy something that's under the local quota, we can't suddenly make it magically go to the foreign quota, right? So, if you buy something under local quota, there's traditionally like a lot of solutions. You can sell it to someone else. You can do a nominee. You can appoint someone, right? Or sometimes what people do is they sell it to a local company, and then maybe the foreigner can reverse acquire the shares of the company. So that's another way to own the asset. Yeah.